our first question, should we be distinctive or play up being part of a team? Do we highlight the Lib Dem separate achievements with an eye on future elections, which is the Liberator view, or do we take responsibility for the whole package to demonstrate the credibility of finally being in government? And that's thought to be the leader's view. Which do you think is right, and what role can the President play? Susan?
So you have to pick one of us to start here. There's, well, I think there are different roles. I don't think the party has to be a team player. The members that we have in a coalition have to be part of that coalition in a realistic way, else we achieve nothing. I mean, when you think of the gains that we've had, whether it's on civil liberties or the environment or trying to protect vulnerable people in ways that the Tories would never have dreamt of, we wouldn't have that if in the, we weren't also understanding that at times we had to compromise within that coalition. But that is for the coalition members. The party's voice is a separate one. We keep our absolutely distinct identity. The message we have to convey to the public is that this is not in conflict, that this is something that happens when you're in coalition. And it's really important, therefore, that we are seen to be unified, all of us to be dedicated to being Liberal Democrats, and we don't have any kind of infighting between us. That, I think, is not the way the party functions. That the party to date has held strongly together, and I think that that is crucially important. Now, you had a second part to the question, and I think I may have lost that bit.
What distinctive role can the President play in that, balancing the two approaches?
Well, again, there is no one else who is positioned to hold the ring, I think, and to make sure, again, this two-way communication, it is absolutely critical. I mean, I think it's fair enough to say that we had very good communication up to the general election, and then the period afterward when the coalition was being negotiated, people felt there was listening going on. There was communication. The party was part of this. It might not have been sitting round the table, but it was there in many ways, and it was a common party decision. And we had a conference right afterwards where people came and were very much made to understand that this was a sort of collective decision amongst us, if you like, with our members of Parliament acting for us in a sense as voices. But since then, that in a way has broken down. Well, it's fairly inevitable, I suppose, because you've got people working 28 hours a day. So we've had the cut in staff that have come from losing what was called short money that we got because we were in opposition. And that has created a real void. We can't let that happen. With elections coming up in 7 months' time, we can't sit back and very gradually rebuild this. We're going to have to move very, very fast to re-establish, I think, that two-way communication. But to come back to the underlying question that you had, I think, that we are not in a team with the Conservative Party. That our members in Westminster Parliament are part of a coalition with the Conservative Party, but we remain distinct and independent, and we should always be driven by our grassroots. That's the strength of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Susan. And Tim, what's your version?
I think I don't think anybody here, I don't suppose any of you, have ever compromised with anybody you agree with. You don't compromise with people you agree with, do you? You compromise with people you disagree with. And I'm entirely proud of the kind of pluralistic politics that we're practicing now by being in coalition with a party with whom we haven't got a lot in common, let's be honest. What we have got in common is the fact that we can both be reasonable human beings and settle on a coalition programme. There's going to be tension. I mean, the last government, the Blair-Brown government, was a coalition. It's just it wasn't an official one. And those disputes and debates took place behind closed doors. These are done in a polite way up front on College Green and in the House of Commons, and that's good, really good. I think there's no conflict whatsoever. It's right that Nick Clegg and indeed the rest of our ministerial team should be bound by collective responsibility while selling their own achievements. And I think the job of the President, or part of the job of the President, and certainly would be if I was in the role, is to go out there and distill, really, extract from our ministers the things they have achieved. I mean, every year in South Lakeland, my local council, I get alongside our councillors up for re-election and I drag out of them what they've achieved over the last 4 years. And sometimes that's really hard, even though they're brilliant councillors. Some of them are absolutely outstanding. And it's still hard to get out of those people what it is they've actually achieved. What zebra crossing have you built, What youth club did you help set up? Those sorts of things. Well, we need to get a mindset amongst our ministers of the little things that they have achieved. And, I always use the example of Steve Webb tripling discretionary housing benefit. Who knows that? Well, I do, and you should. And it's important that we pull out of our ministers the things we have done. We trumpet our achievements. We actually trumpet the things that we've stopped the Tories doing. And if you look at the changes that we've made to the tax system, and how much fairer things are within schools, the pupil premium, this is a much more progressive government than we could ever have hoped for under such a situation of austerity. We need to claim credit for it and do it in a way which is, consistent with being a team player. And that would be my commitment and my aim as President.
Thanks, Tim and Susan. The next question, is there anything else you'd like to say to each other on that subject?
No, I just thought we actually had quite a good example, because a lot of members will have received an email letter from Ros Scott, the current President, on Trident, which will have read slightly differently from a statement on Trident that you might expect from one of our members in the coalition, but is exactly right on the facts. That's from a Liberal Democrat perspective. That's a project which we thought that on the whole, we shouldn't have a like-for-like replacement with Trident. In effect, that is not a closed position, because final decisions will be made after the end of this Parliament. And so there's a Liberal Democrat perspective on that, which may not be fully expressed when you hear members of the coalition speaking. I think that's an important role.
Yeah, and Trident's a good example. It's an example of us being effective in government when all is said and done. And the reality is that if you're in the House of Commons, if you are Nick Clegg, or if you're Vince Cable, or if you're Danny Alexander, your ability to basically crow having got one over on the Tories is somewhat limited, and quite right too. That is not a limitation that applies to me.